Hey guys, Nerdarchy Dave with Nerdarchy for Nerds by Nerds today, hanging out with some of my esteemed colleagues.
I'm Ted.
I'm Nate.
Today we're going to be discussing, or doing a video response essentially to Tabletop Gaming with Juice and SR2Joker. So, Tabletop Gaming with Juice did a video response to SR2Joker, and we're going to do a video response
To him.
So essentially, the original video was, basically the difference between finding your character and developing your character, which seems like the same thing to me. But I think the premise was, having a static character concept with a written backstory, and opposed to just starting the game and developing that backstory and that character development as you play.
Well, there's a couple different points to look at. If you're playing a one-shot game, it's really hard to develop your character over the course of just a couple hours of play. But if you're playing a long-standing game, if your character is not being changed by the influence of the story unfolding, especially if you're doing a long game, I think you're missing out on serious role-playing gold.
You, my friend, have not played enough games with Philip Posey. His characters grow by the second. And I've seen him do a lot of stuff where the character actually has a concept and then develops out of what's going on in the game.
Well, I'll get that opportunity.
And that's from Maps and Dragons, Philip Posey. He's always got some interesting stuff to talk about.
I'll get that opportunity soon, then.
Yes.
See, I think, again, it's like two extremes there. I developed my character all the way, I know what's going on with anything. He's got an opinion on everything, and I know it. I don't have to think about what he's going to have, conflict-wise or, struggle-wise with an interior struggle. Or you can have the guy that's just like, oh yeah, this is like I'm directly responding to stimuli the entire time and changing my views and things. It's like I see that identification as change as, your character development. But if I'm a paladin and I have oaths and I'm sticking to those oaths and my perception of those oaths are not changing, then sticking to that is just as hard as going with the wind and saying my character's developing, and changing my outlook on things. It's like, well, I'm a paladin and 50 years from now, I hope to still be exactly where I am. Well, and you might learn things and you might experience things, but you're not, those experiences are like washing over you and you say, yep, these, a village of people are hurt, and it's my job to save them. Well, but I've got to, let's say I choose between two outcomes. I could help this village, or I could go do this other task. And, once the guy says, well, what do I uphold more? Once he makes that decision, then it's like, well, that fell in line with my thought process on how I'm supposed to act anyway.
Well, in that particular instance, you're using Paladin. It's a great example.
He's just like the iconic idea of unchanging value.
Exactly. But when you've got that situation and you've got that, that great role player that's playing a Paladin, it's kind of up to the DM to say, can I push him? Can I test him? And when you meet and pass or meet and fail those tests, you are evolving that character. But it's up to the DM to really to do that pushing, to present those situations to that type of character. That's the only one that really has that serious locked in pattern that they have to deal with.
I think people in general have that in their mind. It's just some of the people are more mutable and changeable than others.
Yeah, a monk might have, has set values as well.
That's true.
A monastery, they may follow a certain path. But, here's the challenge, right? With that character who has a set way I am, right? And how that affects them going forward. Like you said, well, I expect to be the same way. I'm a paladin. That's what I do. But there's a difference between someone who's new to their paladinhoodness and less experienced in the world goes, this is how it is. This is how everyone should be. Opposed to that paladin 50 years from now goes, I don't hold them to the same standards I hold myself to, or the others of my religion anymore, because they can't possibly see through the perspective that we do, because they are not of.
So you're saying over time that paladin will gain wisdom,
yes,
and maybe be a little less edgy with his oaths.
Is he going to be okay with people murdering? No, but be like, well, they drank, but that's okay because they don't follow my tenets. that it's where they are. You know, he gains perspective.
Well, that's maybe he didn't have that perspective previously, but I was just speaking from a paladin in the sense of, you know, this is the way I am, and this is the way I will continue to be.
You know, the ideals can be there, but at the same time, it's like, okay, well, you know, you're talking about, well, he's going to view himself on a higher standard, but I mean, he also might, you know, change the dichotomy of, you know, what his focus is. You know, he might think, okay, let me think local, and as he gains more of a, you know, more levels of paladin and adventures more, you know, he might try to think, well, how can I affect a global change? You know, so he might make that broader, you know, scope of, well, bringing goodness to this town isn't enough. I want to bring goodness to the city, to the world, to, you know, everywhere that I can encompass.
So as a first level character, he might be more focused like on the immediate, what's in front of him.
Yes.
And you're saying character development over time, he might broaden that too,
Absolutely.
as his influence broadens.
Absolutely. You know, I've done characters. I mean, you know, we've all played a variety of different genres and games. You know, so if you're looking at a fantasy-based thing where you're adventuring and you're encountering great evils and this and that, it's very easy to, you know, either try to rise above and be a better hero. You know, it's also just as easy to, you know, have the DM have some horrible things happen and have characters get turned. You know, I've also done, you know, characters that I've talked with the DM and I've said, look, I've got this story that I want to do with this character, but it involves a character development change. So he's changing over the course of the story, but I've set that up in the beginning.
Well, you know what? See, that goes back to that's a static
a static change.
Yeah,
but
because
it's still
you planned it all along. No, because you're not responding to what's happening. You've already determined what's going to happen before it happened. So like that's the one example of someone who builds their 3-page backstory and even has gone as far to look into the future that
At
this is my
17th level, what's his
plan.
outlook going to be?
Yeah.
So I mean, I think you know, for as long as change is happening, I think that's definitely, you know, good because you want to see, you know, characters change.
Yeah, but the real question here is it happening in a bubble, or is it happening in response to stimuli?
Well, with that particular example, you know, there was some definite changes to my plan. I basically said, this is what I'd like to see happen, and the DM said, okay, well, let's make it happen, and he did things in a vastly different way than I would have thought or I would have considered. I gave him generically, this is where I want to see myself, this is where I want to end up. I didn't say I need this specific example to happen, I need this particular event to happen. I just said this is the arc, so that I started off neutral and ended evil, so that I could, you know, essentially be this villain to the party when I, you know, was supposed to be just kind of lurking in the backgrounds. You know, so in that instance, you know, yes, okay, from your standpoint, it definitely fits, you know, more of the former. But most of the time,
hey, which is awesome because then we have a solid example to use.
You know, and then, you know, I think with most of my characters, you know, I feel that they are more the latter. You have to respond to what's actually happening in the campaign. You have to see what's going on, and you know, there's times where, holy crap, that character, you know, managed to save this insert NPC here. Yay, he feels great. You know, whereas over here, you know, with the Tull game that you ran, I wasn't able to save this character from the maze. He was making oaths and promises all over the place, and you know, somewhere there's a laundry list of things that he's got yet unfulfilled, and he's like, well, I've got centuries worth of life as an elf, but am I going to be able to do it all? Am I going to stack up more oaths than I can possibly fill? And that, you know, that weighs on him.
If he ever gets a belt of masculinity, femininity, he's still coming back as a banshee. He's like, I completely found all these oaths. But no, that game was actually a really good example of character growth. I mean, your monk became the mayor of a settlement. Mm-hmm. You know, Psycho's character was slowly developing into one of my villains.
When was his character's never
Oh, and then Ryan's character became questionable as well because
yeah, he was looking to go evil as well.
he wasn't actually trying to, but things had happened in the campaign that started influencing and changing him, and he actually took a deal to save his life.
Yeah,
Those life-saving deals can bite you in the end.
They
I would
absolutely
have
can.
loved to have seen that campaign evolve.
And then Toll kept growing because as things would happen, he'd have to question. He ended up questioning what he was doing and some of his core values.
Still
Yeah,
hadn't
so
saved
I did
that
not
princess.
plan on being a leader. Mike, I did not plan on being a leader, especially of a town and fighting a war. But it just happened. So that was kind of
Giles had so much happen with him.
Oh, yeah.
Like his backstory was that he was a librarian and a mage, and that's all he wanted to do. That he got plucked off a farm somewheres. Found that he really liked being in a library and books more than he liked
Toiling on a farm.
And he was actually physically he was actually suited to toiling in a farm, but intellectually he actually made it work as well. And he was forced into the world. He to find his own way, to gain experiences, and he did. And he had horrible things happen to him
Repeatedly.
a couple times. But then he also
One encounter, he was knocked unconscious, set on fire, and thrown into the river. One encounter.
I like to
Things
say
happen on a
the
Tuesday
fire was
some-
put out.
yeah,
You're the one that threw him in the river.
knocked
Put
out,
the
burned, and
fire.
drowned. Yeah, he fell in love, had a relationship, and was in the
Technically-
process of having a child.
Technically produced a child.
Yeah. So lots of interesting things happened with him in that one. that one campaign.
Didn't he spend his first encounter hiding? Didn't he just hide under the bed?
He did, yeah. What? I think he tried to, but there were some monsters under it. Yes, folks. Sometimes there are really monsters under the bed.
Yeah. So with the pros and cons, looking at that, I would say major pro to just winging it and going with whatever is. If you make a stable enough background, you kind of have a spot to look back towards. Like, hey, I'm an undead slayer. I can't go making nice with undead ever. So it's like, they're off the list of companions. And, how you're saying, well, this is how I'm going to deal with them. And maybe you don't really know how you'll deal with regular people because you're in the grim task of eliminating the immortals,
Yeah.
So
So when that with that particular example, yes, he was an undead slayer, and he was very grim, and there wasn't a whole lot of joy in his life. Like everything was stacked up as there's all this going on. So he was constantly at war with that. Can I find happiness in what I'm doing? Is it enough?
mm-hmm.
So
So okay, I like comment and respond to both of these videos, and basically what I said is my approach is to usually write a backstory, and it can be 1 page, it could be a paragraph, or it could be 3 pages long. It all depends. But so personally for me, I like to take that backstory and let it influence my character development as I get exposed to new stimuli, new situations. Going, well, how would this character react to that?
Mm-hmm.
And that's the key. Like, he's got to react. Someone who goes, well, this is my backstory. This is how he is.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the difference. Is your character, is he always ising, or is he reacting? And
that's a good point.
you have to react in order to grow. You have to respond to stuff. It's got to affect the character. Maybe your background is one thing, but because of all of your experiences, by the time you get to the end of the road, you're like, you start to question and rethink everything as you know it, or maybe it reaffirmed it.
Mm-hmm.
Your backstory is the lens that you view the world
Right.
from, and it can either affirm it and confirm it, or it may totally invalidate it.
Right.
The world is not black and white usually, so there's a lot of shades of gray. So probably it's somewhere in between.
Right. So I would say, all right, from finding a backstory, if you want to say, well, I've got this immutable character, your pros are for a player, you don't have to worry about the change. You know how to role play that character. At any point in time, you can pick it up, get in that mindset, and go. You don't have to think about what's happened in the game. You're there. The con is you're losing out on serious role-playing opportunities by having that character develop based on specifics, letting your fellow players see how the quote fantasy in-game real world changes him over months, years, days worth of role playing. Yes, I totally did that out of order.
Yeah. Well, you know what though? I just thought of something. It just occurred to me. I'm trying to think that did I write down what we're doing this video on wrong? Finding the character versus developing the character. And I'm like, no, I didn't. Finding the character, what he meant is, now that I think about it, is finding the character means you really didn't do anything for the backstory, and you're just winging it as you go, and you're going to find out what this character is about. Where developing the backstory really is having the character already developed, and you're going to always view everything through that lens you've already predetermined.
Okay, so the things are flip flopped.
Yeah.
Sorry, guys, Dave's. So all right, the opposite.
It's
the opposite
completely
side
relevant
of
to everything we're talking about,
that. Right.
though.
So the opposite side of that, when you are going to let the character develop through the course of the game,
with not a lot of backstory.
The
class background, and that's it. Kind of thing.
The pros are, you really get to develop a character, see how things fly, and you can really let the material that your DM is presenting to you wash over you, and see what kind of building blocks that makes for you. The cons, if you don't really have a developed backstory to work with, and nothing that is going to help you essentially build, then there's obviously something lacking there, and you could be missing out on something.
What about when you do that? You develop the backstory, you come up with the character, you understand it, you're ready to role play it. Then after 2 sessions, for some reason, you don't dig it anymore. because basically you went and did it all before it. And I've seen this happen more than once, where you come up with all these great ideas, but for whatever reason, 3 sessions in, they don't feel so great anymore. And I think, and Juice was talking about this, where, he actually finds that he personally enjoys not coming up with all the details in the backstory at front, because
he doesn't even like making characters.
Sometimes. But no, his argument was it locks you into that character. And what if you get locked into the character that you don't like anymore?
Well, you definitely have to have some level of enjoyment playing, but it's just like, what do you like to play? And that, I guess, that would become gamers' preference. Like for me, I don't like the moral relativism idea of you just like, well, I'm this fighter, I've got this Outlander background, and I'm just going to wing it. Well, you've got something going on. You're not just going to like directly say, well, you walk into a bar and some guy pushes you. Well, what do you do?
But why not bring it out in game? Why not go? Why not like through the course of the adventure, you start dropping things from your background, right? That they weren't there before. You just made them up on the spot. But it hasn't been talked about. Doesn't matter if you just created it now or three adventures ago.
If you're making irrelevant, information or things that the DM is not gonna find contradictory to what he's working on, then it's not a problem. But if you got this, gigantic backstory that you're not sharing, and that you're going to develop, and you're like, oh well, yeah, by the way, I've been holding this artifact this whole time.
What I'm talking about is you guys are in a tavern and you're sharing stories or whatever, and you're like, when I was 12, my father took me out, took me to the farm that we oversee, to where all the migration workers were working, and he goes into this long explanation of how he was doing them a favor by letting them work on the farm and not pay them the right wages or whatever. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. Things like that. And then, furthermore, how that flavors him from going forward. How he perceives a certain situation.
Well, I don't see a
we're not
problem
talking about making up game mechanics like I have this special item.
Yeah.
So I'm using a generic example.
So what I'm saying is, having that kind of like willy-nilly, all I did was the bare bones of my character, is that you just randomly make up stuff as you go. And it may not be completely random either. You may have somewhat of an idea,
right,
as opposed to where you've done all that work already, and now you start playing a character, and you're like, you know what? This isn't as fun and interesting as I thought it was going to be.
Oh yeah, I feel like you shouldn't be locked into that backstory. As much as you are, well, yeah. If you said your father died when you were 10,
but if you already put it out there, you gave it to the DM.
Yeah.
Maybe you shared it with another player. It is kind of locked in.
That is, yes. But all the other kind of stuff, like So what? You could have owned a farm and your dad could have lost it. That could be in a different story that you didn't tell at all.
Yeah.
And like I've had, I don't know, a dozen different jobs in my life. So what's a few more? I could just tell you guys. I could invent some job I had when I was 17. So what? So in real life you could do it.
See, I don't find that happening where I write a story and I don't like it happening. I love this hobby, and I enjoy role playing. Be it the interactive story, the combat, the being somebody else. I love it all. So I mean, we've done games where the DM has created a character and said, pick one, or just hands you a character sheet. This is who you're being for this session or this campaign. I can do that. I'll just sit down and I'll role play. It might not be the man. I was really not feeling a cleric tonight. Oh man, I was really hoping for the wizard tonight. But you know what? It's still role playing. It's still fun. So you make the best of it. If it's not exactly what you want to do tonight, you know what? Maybe next time. You'll make a change.
And silence. No. All
Pretty
right.
much tapped for this conversation.
Yes.
So,
well, so that's some of our ideas. You guys, hey, maybe you want to do a video response to us doing a video response to Juice doing a video response.
Video response
to SR2Joker's,
original question of, we don't even know what it was. No, I think it's a good topic. Finding the character versus developing the character. Figuring out as you go as to, I already know what this character is and does. On the one side you got, you're just responding to stimuli as it comes in. On the other side, you already know how that character essentially responds to stimuli. It's just a matter of what was the stimuli that he's responding to. You guys can let us know what you think. Do you have something else?
No, I was.
All right. You guys can let us know what you think in the comments below. Weigh in on it. Do a video response if you want. Like, subscribe, and even share.
You can check us out on Facebook.
You can also check us out on the Nerdarchy subreddit.
So until next time,
Stay nerdy.